Hello and welcome to the Limbwalkers Show. This is a cooperative effort with Chesterton High School's radio station WDSO, the Northwest Indiana Workforce Development, and producer Will Glaros. I am Brent Martinson, Chesterton High School principal. To start with, we would like to explain the purpose and name of this show. The show is called Limbwalkers because it is based on a piece from Mark Twain. The quote that inspired our show name is, quote, "One will never taste the fruit unless one ventures out on the limb," end of quote. Next, we would like to tell you about the Work Ethics Certificate Initiative at Chesterton High School. The Work Ethics Certificate is an opportunity for all students at CHS to obtain a certificate that shows the student has the qualities and skills employers value. On Limbwalkers, the students from Chesterton High School's radio station, WDSO, will be interviewing professional members of the community on various topics of interest. This show will air on the first Tuesday of each month at 4 p.m.
Good afternoon, I'm Devin Michael with the November program in the Limbwalkers series concerning work ethics certification for high school students. My guest is Dr. Danita Johnson-Hughes, President and CEO of Edgewater Health in Gary, Indiana. Welcome to our program, Dr. Hughes.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So our topic today is recognizing problems and problem solving. Dr. Hughes, why did you choose this topic?
I chose this topic because I think it's one that's very much needed in the workplace, and I think just throughout life generally, because we all have problems or are confronted with challenges, and it's not a matter of if, it's when you'll be confronted with these things. And I think it serves us well to be able to know how to handle problems and just do some thinking around how to handle those and do it effectively.
So who should be responsible for identifying problems? The employer, the employee, or both?
I think both. And of course, an employer typically knows many of the problems, but is looking for someone to help them to think through them and to come up with some resolutions. Employees oftentimes identify problems that employers don't see. And I know that when we hire people, we typically hire them for the skill set that they bring, their work experiences, their academic preparation, reading, writing, arithmetic, those kinds of skills. But more importantly, employers are looking for people who can do critical thinking, who can think through situations and come up with solutions. Because being a CEO myself, I know that, problems come up. And people identify problems a lot. And it's very difficult when folk come to you or people come to you and they always want you to be the person with the answers. Because I don't have all the answers, because I don't know all the minute details of a particular situation. I'm there to help and to guide, but it's always so positive and so wonderful when I have someone who can actually think through a situation that, they either can gather the knowledge, the facts, the data, and think it through and help me to come up with a solution, or they come up with a solution and present it to me, and we can kind of talk about it and see if that works.
Should there be a team effort to solve the problem?
Sometimes, yes. It depends on the problem. It depends on, I think, how widespread the problem is. I mean, if it's something that affects you just individually, a lot of times you can think it through and come up with something that you think might work well, but always trying to be fair and objective when you do these things. But when it's sort of a global problem, either in a workplace or a school setting or wherever, sometimes you need other minds to help you to bring a different perspective, to help do some creative thinking around the problem.
So how do you go about solving a problem at work? Does it depend on the type of problem?
It depends on the type of problem. Again, if it's a small problem, any problem really, you sit down, you think about, who does it affect? Why is it a problem in the first place? And how can you come up with a solution that will do the most good for the most people? And that means gathering the facts about it, getting the appropriate data that you need, and becoming knowledgeable about the issues that affect the problem. And then you begin to work through it, either, with the team you've selected or thinking it through yourself, and then bringing others together to kind of talk about it and really discuss it in detail, because, things don't affect everybody in the same way.
So are there any general problems found in all workplaces?
I think most problems that are found in workplaces are really people problems, relationships. How well do people get along? How well do teams work together? Are Do you have the right leadership in place? And I'm not necessarily always talking about who's in a supervisory position or a management position. It could be somebody else on the team who people know and respect and will listen to. So I think they're mostly people problems. And sometimes you find other kinds of issues in the workplace, but usually they're people problems. And the more you're able to work with people and understand different personalities, because everybody's not the same. Some people work differently. Some people react to situations differently. So the more you can bring together the people who you're working with and build a cohesive team, and that's where you'll solve the problem. Everybody's not going to always be on the same page, but often you can convince people or bring them around to your way of thinking if that's the way to go.
If you are hiring someone, how would you ascertain whether they will be someone who would look for problems and know how to go about solving them?
Well, first, I would look to see how are they prepared academically. What did they do on their other jobs, if they've had another job? And I present them with a scenario, a problem that currently exists, and ask them how they would go about solving the problem. And just ask them to present to me a situation that they've had, where they've had to solve a problem. And that way you kind of get to know, but you get them to talking. And once they're talking and you're kind of dialoguing with one another, you can pretty much determine whether or not, with the right questions, you can determine whether or not the person can be a good problem solver. Now, let me say this. Problem solving is a developed skill. Everybody doesn't have the same level of ability to do critical thinking, but I do believe it can be developed with a willing person. So it depends on the experience level, but if it's a new person coming into a job, a young person, if they've got everything else that you need, often you can help them to learn how to think through a problem. And it's simply a matter of making sure you know all the issues, making sure you can determine the factual versus the non-factual, and get the data that you need in order to solve the problem. Just to get them to not make knee-jerk decisions, to sit down and think it through. Because, sometimes your first reaction might be the right one, but a lot of times once you've thought it through and talked to other people, because there are always other perspectives too, why did someone do this? Well, talk to that person and talk to someone else who might know them. So you have to be creative about how you go about solving problems. And a lot of times it means looking at it from another person's point of view.
If during a job interview you're asked the question, tell us about a time there was a problem in your current position and how you resolved it, what would be a good response to this question?
Well, it depends on the problem. So if I'm asking someone to tell me about a problem, I let them tell me what the problem is, and then I would listen to how they handled it. And often if they've worked on a problem, they've had a problem, and they've either solved it successfully or not, they know that. And so they'll tell you how they solved it. And you can listen to them and see if that's the same way you would have done it, or offer a different perspective. Or if they tell you they didn't solve it, what did they learn from that experience? How would you go about doing that differently the next time?
Are certain employers or employees more prone to look for problems and try to solve them? What qualities would that person possess?
Well, there are people who are just wired that way. They are people who want to be very helpful. They're people who want to be successful. And they want to be successful personally, or they want their team to be successful, and that's always very good in a workplace. You want the team to be successful. So there are some people who will go out and try to identify issues that might be related to or impacting the situation that's creating the problem. And there are other people who are just very good at being the people that come in and do the work, but they need someone else who is capable of and who wants to know what to do and how to work through a problem. But and it's kind of hard because people are, like I said, people are different, and what the qualities that might exist in one person may be different in another person, because I do a lot of personality assessment testing, and there are certain personalities that are more prone to critical thinking, but it doesn't mean that others can't develop that skill, because we all have some of the traits. We all have some ability to do some critical thinking. We all have some ability to do some problem solving. We all have some ability to be creative. It's just what level of that do we each possess. I'm not a very creative person, but I can think critically, so it's nice sometimes to have someone say, yeah, that's a good idea, but have you thought about this? And we can maybe able to do it this way. It might be more effective, and that's always good. So you just look for the people who have the personalities or the qualities that you need in order to bring a situation together. But believe me, I think you need all types of personalities. You just need to be able to bring them together in a work environment and help them to be able to work together and solve the problem.
How is identifying problems and solving them helpful in your workplace?
Well, I work in healthcare, so we have lots of problems all the time. They're either maybe a dissatisfied patient or an employee who has a grievance. So, the problems will surface. You just have to have a structure in place that helps you to identify what are the possible solutions. And that's kind of what we do. We'll take a situation that has occurred in the past. What did we do then? What could we have done better? And really try to train our staff around how to deal with certain problems and who to go to. Because all the time, we don't always know the answers. I don't know all the answers. So I'll go to someone who I think might know the answer to a particular problem and have them help me through it. And always having a willing attitude, and a positive attitude about, and we can fix anything. And sometimes people get so bogged down in the negative. And I think that being positive all the time allows room for growth and development.
So what do you think is the importance of this work ethic?
Problem solving and critical thinking, because as I mentioned, I think that most employers today are looking for people who have not just the basic skills, that are not prepared simply academically. They know how to read, they know how to write. They need people who can think, because a company or an organization doesn't grow and doesn't become successful without the collaborative knowledge and thinking of the people who work there. So, if you want to grow, and most organizations don't want to be stagnant. They need people who are creative, who can think critically through situations, who can really help the organization to grow and to get better. And that's the only way. You have to have people who can think. You're the CEO, the vice president, the finance person. They know their areas pretty much, or like the CEO typically has a general knowledge of everything. But in terms of really being able to dissect the problem, they really need someone who can to come in and add a different perspective, or bring in situations or information that person may not know. So I think critical thinking and problem solving, they go together, and they are really important in a job situation.
So do you have any final comments you'd like to add about problems and problem solving?
Yes. I think that a lot of times people underestimate the importance of problem solving and critical thinking. It's very important, because we all have a tendency when we're confronted with some information, especially when it takes us off guard, to react. But I think it takes skill to pull back and even to admit that you don't know, because a lot of times you don't need to have an immediate answer. It's much more effective if you can go and sit down and think about how you're going to approach the problem. So I think it's really important, because a lot of times when you just react, it creates more problems, things that you hadn't even thought about. But if you sit down, take a deep breath, and, contact some others and discuss it with other people, gather some information about it, sometimes your answer will be different, or you might go about attacking the problem in a different way. So I think that it's very important that people understand and realize you don't have to answer something immediately. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's very much okay to say, I don't know. The best thing you can say when you don't know is, but I'm going to try and find out. And so you take the time and you go and try and find out.
All right, so thank you for being my guest, Dr. Hughes. That was Dr. Danita Johnson Hughes, President and CEO of Edgewater Health in Gary, Indiana. Today we discussed the topic recognizing problems and problem solving and why this is an important work ethic. Limbwalkers will come to you on the first Tuesday of each month at 4 p.m. Stay tuned for a new topic and guest on the next program. I'm Devin Michael. Thank you for listening.